Amazing facts in the Bible. The Bible is primarily considered to be a book of spiritual inspiration, and it is certainly that. Yet there are many amazing historical and scientific facts contained in Holy Scripture as well. Many of the scientific revelations contained in the Bible were not discovered by secular study until the 20th century. The oldest book of the Bible, Job, written approximately 2,500 years BC, accurately describes undersea rivers and oceanic volcanic activity, the wind and sea currents, astronomy, and the rain cycle. Job tells of the circuit of the earth, orbit, and that it hangs on nothing. This was confirmed by modern science over 4,000 years later. The rock record. Science also confirms the account of creation as described in the Bible. The book of Genesis lists the order in which life on earth was created, with the fossil record bearing out the exact order in the layers of geological strata. First, grasses, then fruit-bearing plants, then fish and bird life, animals, and then man, being the crown of his creation. Worldwide flood. The fossil record also confirms the biblical account of a worldwide flood. The highest mountain peaks testify of a massive flood that covered the earth. For instance, shark teeth have been found at the very highest summits in mountains in California, and sea fossils have been found in the midst of deserts. The description of the flood in Genesis 7:11 says that the fountains of the great deep were broken up. This is consistent with the evidence of the rapid layering of much sediment and lava from cracks in the earth mantle from underwater volcanic eruptions. The fact that there was a cataclysmic universal flood allowed for the rapid formation of rock strata. The flowing lava encased plant and animals, preserving them completely as intact fossils, not possible in the normal decay process. The fact that the same sandstone sedimentary layers are found consistently all over the world show that at one time the earth was covered with water. This allowed for massive deposits to form the same sedimentary strata worldwide. Mount St. Helens event. A scientifically observable example of underwater deposition of lava forming layers of rock in a relatively short period of time occurred when Mount St. Helens erupted. A nearby lake had layers of igneous rock form under the water in just a matter of days. The layers resembled a mini Grand Canyon. If one looked at the lake bed without knowing that a volcano had quickly deposited the rock layers, one might assume that it took millions or even billions of years for these layers to form. In the normal sedimentary process of gradual deposition of mud and rock, it would take millions of years to form those rock strata. In actuality, it took only a few days. Rocks don't lie. Can we assume the possibility that the rock strata in the earth may have also formed rapidly, given the evidence that there was at one time a worldwide flood? We can not only assume, but conclude that the Earth's rock layers did in fact form very rapidly. This is based on geological evidence in the rock layers themselves. Firstly, there had to be a rapid accumulation of sediment to cover plant and animal life in order for their fossilized remains to be preserved intact. The remains did not show decomposition and deterioration that would normally take place over a period of time of gradual sedimentary accumulation of hundreds of thousands of years. The fossils had to be preserved quickly before the plants and animals had time to deteriorate. Polystrate fossils. Another phenomena proves the rapid formation of the Earth's rock strata. That is the existence of polystrate fossils. These are fossils of plants that traverse vertically through several strata of rock. One very tall polystrate fossil was discovered in its upright position, extending through rock strata that supposedly took 5 million years to deposit. That is a scientific impossibility. One particular plant fossil, for instance, was not a tree with a hard xylem, but a very tall reed-type plant with a flaccid, bendable cambium or outer layer. The plant could not have maintained its upright position, allowing layers of sediment to accumulate on it for even thousands of years, much less millions. There are many of this type of fossilized plants that have been discovered. They traverse through many strata of rock layers, which show that the layers of mud and sediment had to accumulate very quickly to preserve the plant and maintain its upright position. Rapid accumulation of sedimentary and igneous rock from underwater lava flow in a worldwide flood scenario can account for the polystrate fossil phenomena. The old Earth theory, presuming it took billions of years to form the rock layers, cannot account for polystrate fossils being preserved and transcending through many strata of rock. Dinosaur prints? There are other discoveries that indicate that the Earth is very young and that the Earth's strata developed in a relatively short period of time. At one time, scientists thought that the Earth to be billions of years old. They believed that bacteria developed 3.5 billion years ago, and then 530 million years ago, living systems began to develop. The Mesozoic age, for example, supposedly spans 65 to 300 million years ago and has 5 divisions. According to their theory, dinosaurs died off 64 million years ago, and man did not appear until 2.5 million years ago, with modern man only appearing 60,000 years ago. However, these arbitrarily assigned geological periods were not based on accurate dating methods. They were set by pure speculation and supposition. Geology destroys geological column. One example in point is a discovery in a 1950 Texas oil dig in which the Gulf Oil Company uncovered a fossilized human footprint in the Permian strata of rock. The Permian age stratus is supposedly 250 million years old, when, according to evolutionary theory, dinosaurs had not even developed. And yet they found scientific evidence that human beings existed during that period. In Glen Rose, Texas, in 2000, a human footprint was found in the rock layer with a large dinosaur footprint on top of it. There were water ripples in the strata showing that these prints were made in mud, which had been quickly covered up, perhaps by lava, which encapsulated both prints in the fossil record. These prints were in the Cretaceous strata of rock, purported to be 110 million years old. This totally shatters the entire evolutionary geologic column that theorized the relative date of man, dinosaurs, and Earth being millions of years old. The heavens declare the glory of God. Because of the complexities of the universe, many scientists now acknowledge that creation is not the result of an accidental cosmic explosion of gases, but rather the result of very complex and intricate design. The established laws of physics point to the fact that intelligent design had its hand in it all. For instance, our solar system had to be designed so exactly in order to make life on Earth possible. Jupiter's relative position with the Earth, its fixed distance of 40 light minutes from the Earth and 2.5 times the size, and its weight allows for it to shield the Earth from destruction of comets and asteroids that would completely destroy it. The exact position and mass of the planets have to be perfectly lined up in circular, horizontal orbits around the Sun, unlike other galaxies, in order to allow for Earth's temperature and gravity to maintain life. This cosmic order points to a creative designer. Giant leap for mankind. Another interesting fact regarding astronomy is that the Earth's moon proves that creation is very young. When NASA scientists planned for the first lunar landing, they anticipated there would be hundreds of feet of fine dust accumulated on the moon's surface, given the rate at which dust accumulates and their presumed age of the planets. The lunar module was equipped with disc landing pads to keep it from sinking in the moon dust. Upon taking one small step for man, but one giant leap for mankind, scientists were surprised to find that there was only around 2 inches of dust on the moon's surface, making the moon very young. This amount is consistent with the biblical account of the earth and moon being only thousands of years old, not billions. God said, "Let there be." Additionally, the fact that the galaxies are moving apart and their relative temperatures prove that there was a beginning of matter, energy, space, and time. Renowned astrophysicist Dr. Hugh Ross states that all matter, space, and time came into existence at one time. Einstein's general law of relativity shows the universe had a beginning and that it expands away from each other. Temperature fluctuations show that the, quote, Big Bang, unquote, model is correct, as cosmic background radiation and the expansion of the universe demonstrate. In other words, there was a big bang. God said, "Let there be," and bang, it happened. Astronomy observes the past by seeing light waves and radio waves, proving the biblical account of creation. There was a beginning of matter, energy, space, and time. The fool has said in his heart, "There is no God." Astronomy proves that light separated from darkness instantaneously. Sounds like Genesis 1, doesn't it? Astrophysics confirms there was a singular beginning of matter, and that matter had to be created. The cooling down of the universe, dark energy, the relation of the Milky Way, sun, moon, and earth all point to divine design. The inception of the universe was an instantaneous, carefully fine-tuned, intelligently controlled phenomena, not a random explosion. Scientists agree. Intelligent design. Sir Isaac Newton said, "This most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent being." Dr. Charles Townes, recipient of the Nobel Prize for Physics and inventor of the laser beam, states, "Somehow intelligence must have been involved in the laws of the universe." Dr. John Winhold, professor of physics from the renowned research university Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, tells us, quote, "I see the glory of God is on display in this physical world. I look at the fine workings, the internal structure of the world, the microstructure of it. It is not a chaotic thing. It is an organized thing. There is great beauty, regularity, and great detail in the fine workings of this world. We have atoms, we have nuclei, we have subnuclear or elementary particles. There is a beautiful organization and regularity and structure even at the subnuclear level. God is the architect. He's the author. It didn't just happen. It is God himself displaying who he is. The creator is a person that loves beauty. Physics is mathematical. The equations that describe all of nature have beautiful mathematical organization. It is verification that God is the Lord of the universe." End quote. Albert Einstein said, "Everyone who is seriously interested in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that a spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to man, and one in the face of which we, with our modest powers, must feel humble." The first and last word on the subject is, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." Genesis 1:1. Shall a nation be born in a day? Other evidence of God's divine power and wisdom come directly from the pages of the Bible. Bible prophecy is a confirmation of divine providence and foreknowledge in the affairs of man. Biblical prophecy is history written before the fact, hundreds and sometimes thousands of years in advance. The book of Ezekiel has amazing examples of prophetic accuracy regarding the future. During the Babylonian captivity, Ezekiel predicted that the Jewish people would be in captivity without their own sovereign nation for over 2,500 years. Then, exactly on cue, the sovereign nation of Israel was established on May 14, 1948, exactly on the day that Ezekiel predicted over 2,000 years before. That was divine revelation. History in advance. Amazing predictions are also in the book of Daniel. This prophet saw all of the world's empires in sequential order. How could Daniel predict hundreds of years before the fact the world powers that rise up after the Babylonian Empire? He specified Alexander the Great's conquest of the world, his 4 generals that would replace him, and the subsequent Roman Empire. How could he have known 600 years before the fact that Messiah would be cut off, Jesus killed, followed by the Romans destroying the Jewish temple? Over 300 specific Bible predictions concerning Jesus' life, death, and resurrection were fulfilled exactly as predicted in the Old Testament. The statistical probability of these prophecies all being fulfilled in one man is 1 chance in 480 billion times 1 billion times 1 trillion, far beyond the realm of chance. The Dead Sea Scrolls validate that all of these ancient prophecies were written hundreds of years before their fulfillment. These were the divine prophetic revelations of the God of the Bible. Bible codes. In addition to the prophecies contained in Scripture, there are amazing hidden messages encoded in the very text of the Hebrew Bible. Isaiah 53 has the name of the prophesied suffering servant embedded in it. Every 12th letter in Hebrew spells, Jesus is my name. Through computer analysis, researchers have discovered numerical sequences of names and dates that pertain to current events. The name of the late Prime Minister Rabin and even his assassin's name was encoded in the 3,500-year-old book of Exodus. In the ancient book of Deuteronomy are found references to the Holocaust with the names Hitler, Nazis, and the Auschwitz death camp named. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's name is encoded in the text. The Bible is truly a divinely inspired prophetic book. One cannot use the Bible code as a form of divination, but it does confirm that the author knew the beginning from the end. Food for thought. Medical truths and principles were revealed in the Bible long before the AMA discovered them. Kosher diet regulations of the Jews have been confirmed to minimize contamination and optimize nutrition. The regulation of not mixing meat and dairy allows for the benefits of iron from the meat to be absorbed in the body. Mixing meat with dairy can cause anemia because the calcium in the dairy inhibits iron absorption. They now know that shellfish, forbidden by the law of Moses, not only often contains heavy metals, but bacterial infections. Also, the type of protein in shellfish is difficult for the human body to digest. Pork has many issues, including parasite infestation and cancer-causing properties. The Great Physician. In the book of Leviticus, there are medical principles, including quarantine and frequent hand washing, that minimize the spread of disease. Not until the last 200 years did medical science understand that disease was caused by microorganisms. They then could appreciate the methods of purification spelled out in the law of Moses to protect from cross-contamination. These biblical principles of cleanliness were millennia ahead of their time. How could Abraham have known almost 4,000 years ago that the level of vitamin K, which aids in blood clotting, was at its very highest level in the human body on the exact day, the 8th day after birth, that God instructed the Hebrew males to be circumcised? Amazing. Genetically speaking. Genetics also confirms the veracity of the Bible. The biblical account of creation tells us that in the beginning God created one man and one woman, and that the world was populated by this one set of parents. DNA can trace the ancestral mitochondrial, which proves there was only one man and one woman from whom the whole world descended. Additionally, the 7+ billion Y genes show that all the world's population came from one gene pool, DNA source. This is consistent with the biblical account of the flood, in which the only gene pool was Noah's family, who survived to repopulate the earth. Had this flood not occurred, the population would have been so large today, in the trillions, that the earth could not support life. Today's population of 8 billion people is consistent with the number of people who would be alive given the 8 individuals who began reproducing after the flood 4,500 years ago. Science validates the Bible. Simple life? The very complexity of cells is such that even bacteria are not simple life forms. Cells are specific and highly organized. In each cell, there are 60,000 proteins in exact arrangement. If the proteins are not in the prescribed order, the cell begins to biodegrade in a matter of minutes. The odds that 60,000 proteins self-organized into effective arrangement to make cell function is 1 chance in 10 to the 4,478,000 power. Just 10 to the 50th power mathematically has 0 chance of occurring. It is impossible for proteins, the basis for all cells, to have randomly arranged. They did not evolve. Proteins for cells had to be intelligently designed. Evolutionary impossibilities. What about mutation in genes? Do mutations result in evolution? No. Not evolution that causes change into a different species. That is the theory of macroevolution, the Darwinian theory. Yes, microevolution does occur within a species' genetic boundaries, which allows for adaptability. However, the changes are not due to new DNA being introduced, but existing DNA proteins that are allowed to express themselves given different environmental conditions. In other words, a moth species may have the genetic DNA to express itself in a variety of colors, even as we have DNA from parents and grandparents that could result in some offspring being dark-haired and others in the same family having red or blonde hair. If the conditions for the moth in the jungle favored longevity due to its green color camouflaging it, then eventually the gene pool would favor and change to eliminate the expression of, say, a white-colored moth with the same DNA pool. In other words, the green moths would tend to survive and reproduce better than their white-colored moth cousins in the jungle environment. There is not a change of the DNA, but simply environmental conditions that tends to favor one trait over another. This is microevolution, that is, small changes of characteristics with certain dominant expressions manifesting more commonly with a species. No fossil proof. However, there is no living or fossilized record of any entity changing from one species to another. That is macroevolution, which is only a theory with no scientific basis. In fact, macroevolution is genetically impossible. It is genetically impossible for a chimpanzee to become a human or a human to degenerate into a chimpanzee. There are 48 million differences between the nucleotides of the DNA of a human and the nearest DNA of a chimpanzee. A series of only 3 differences in nucleotides causes fatality in a species or causes the following generation to be sterile. Genetically speaking, evolution is impossible. The genetic code dictates that like begets like. The genetic seed code that you sow is what you will reap. There has never been evolution into which one species changes into another. The complexity of life, even at the most basic level, is such that it could not have occurred randomly. The whole ecosystem is so complex and interdependent that it had to be intelligently designed by a master creator. No monkey in the family tree. Geology also destroys the theory of evolution, since there has not been found one transitional life form for any species in the fossil record. In other words, there are no legitimate, quote, missing links, unquote. Apes are still apes. Humans are still human. If apes evolved into humans, then why do apes still exist? There are no transitional forms between apes and humans. The great missing link finds that anthropologists have promulgated have turned out to be chimpanzee bones, not intermediary species. The human bones found in Germany with hunchbacks turned out to be modern human skeletons with signs of severe rickets, consistent with the lack of vitamin D from limited sun exposure in the Black Forest area where the bones were discovered. Archaeology. Finally, archaeology completely validates the Bible. Biblical accounts of kings, peoples, and historical events have all been confirmed by recent archaeological finds. Cities that some didn't believe existed, such as Sodom and Gomorrah at the bottom of the Dead Sea, have been discovered. Chariot wheels have been found in the midst of the Red Sea, in the very place where the Bible records the Egyptian army's chariot wheels came off, according to Exodus 14. Some historians doubted the existence of the Hittites, referenced in Genesis 23. In 1906, the Hittite capital was discovered with many historical tablets confirming it. There are cities that previously were only referenced in the Bible, but have now been discovered and excavated. Haran, Hazor, Dan, Megiddo, Shechem, Samaria, Shiloh, Gezer, Gibeah, Beth Shemesh, Beth Shean, Beersheba, and Lachish. Archaeology confirms the biblical account of Israel's history in extra-biblical finds. Hieroglyphics found in Egypt of Shishak's invasion of Judah completely validates the biblical accounts of 1 Kings and 2 Chronicles during the reign of Rehoboam. An Assyrian obelisk unearthed in 1846 references Israel's leader Jehu giving tribute to Assyria's Shalmaneser III, as 2 Kings 9:10 makes mention. New Testament confirmation. The city treasurer Erastus was mentioned by name 3 times in the New Testament. Recently, out of the ruins of Corinth, they uncovered an ancient building stone with his name and title clearly engraved. In 1961, archaeologists discovered an ancient monument inscribed at the Roman amphitheater near Caesarea. The inscription reads, Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea. Prior to that, the name Pontius Pilate was only known from New Testament writings. Many other archaeological finds continue to validate the Bible's accuracy 100%. Thy word is truth. All of these scientific facts validate that the Bible is divinely inspired and true. But when one knows the author of the book, there's never any question of his integrity or veracity. Much scientific information referenced from contributing excerpts of Acts and Facts publications, 2000 through 2003, of the Institute for Creation Research, Dr. John D. Morris, founder.